welcome back to WTF is George Cooking. For today's episode, we're going to be working on some homemade pizza dough. We're going to be making pizza later on. That'll be the next video after this. But before we can make our homemade pizza, we need the dough. This is a nice, quick, and easy recipe. Only takes about 30 minutes for it to rise, which is a lot faster than some of the recipes I've found out there. And I've used this one in the past. Really enjoy the taste of it. Pizza dough is great. You can use it for lots of things. Of course, pizza. But you can also use it for other things, such as we're going to be trying out some garlic cheese bread later using a pizza dough base. And in the past, I've used pizza dough. I've cut it up into small little balls and used it for deep fried cinnamon sugar dessert. Today's recipe doesn't have too many complicated things. We have flour, we have some warm water, salt, sugar, and some yeast. And a little bit of olive oil, but that's just to oil a bowl. Let's get started here. First steps first is we're going to take our water, or warm water, use this bowl. 1 cup of warm water. The warmth will help activate the yeast, so don't just use cold tap water. We're going to need 1 teaspoon of the instant yeast. Now, 1 teaspoon is not necessarily going to be the same size as one of the packets of instant yeast. So make sure that if you are using packets of instant yeast, rather than buying it from, say, Bulk Barn, that you have enough and you're using the right amount. And also in the water, we're going to add 1 teaspoon of sugar. Give the yeast something to eat. Okay, so let's give that a quick little stir together. And we're going to let that sit and get that yeast activated. Should only take a few minutes, about 5 minutes or so maybe. What we're looking for is foam to start appearing on top of the water. That's just the yeast digesting away at the sugar, releasing some gas, and that's how we know that it's activated, it's working, and it's doing what we want it to do. Now, we're going to move on. We're going to need 2 cups of sugar, 2 cups of flour for this next bit. Really like this flour container, but it's really hard to actually get at, so we might have to replace it with something a little bit larger mouth, just so it's easier for me to use. The easier it is for you to use everything in your kitchen, the more likely you're going to use your kitchen to cook or bake, and you're going to have more fun that way. So if you can make something easier, probably best to do that. Alright, so we have our we got our flour there, and we're going to add just again 1 teaspoon only of salt. And we're just going to start stirring that together. Okay, so now all we need to do is wait for the yeast to start rising, or start the gas bubbles to start appearing on top of the yeasty water. And in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get my oven started for pizza, which is coming later. Alright, it's been about 5 minutes now, and the yeast looks like it is activated in our water. It's really fun to actually watch the yeast, or watch the mixture, because when the yeast does activate, it eats that sugar and releases that gas, it does this nice little, almost explosion it looks like, as the gas just rises to the surface. It's really cool to watch, if you're into that sort of thing. So we have that going. We have our flour and salt all mixed together here. And so what we're going to do is slowly start adding our water mixture into here. So I do about half, get it moving a little bit, and then I'll add the second half in. Now, while you're waiting for your yeast to activate there, it's a good time to just spend a quick minute or two, wash a couple of the small little dishes, the measuring cups and whatnot that you used, just because it's good to have a clean kitchen, and I find it helps stop the girlfriend from yelling at me when I do keep the kitchen clean. So, I'm just going to mix this together. Now, I'm not mixing it too fast or too hard right now. It's just mix it until it's all sort of clumpy, starts forming into a ball, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to knead it for a couple of minutes as well. Okay, so this is mostly sticking together now. So we use 2 cups of flour in the recipe. We're going to just use a little bit more flour on our surface here. What this is going to do is just help the dough to not stick to our counter as we knead it. Pizza dough is a very hands-on project to make. Good for kids to do. They like to get in and touch the weird feeling stuff as well. So if you got kids, this is a fun one to do with them at home. Add a little bit more flour here. Alright. And so now we're just going to knead this. Going to get it nice and smooth. Move it around. It's still very tacky as well. That's been normal, sort of par for the course for us. When it rises, it's going to it's going to lose that tackiness. But for now, this has been how it's always been for us when we have made it. Okay. So pretty small dough ball. Nothing really to it to get it all together. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a clean bowl. We're going to add a little bit of olive oil, just oil up the bowl a bit. This will help the dough, because it is still tacky. If we don't oil it, it's just going to stick to the bowl, to your bowl. But if you oil it, it should come right out, no fuss, in about 30 minutes time. So we're going to just cover this with a fresh, clean tea towel, dishcloth, whatever you want to call it. Fresh out of the wash, just put it there. You're going to leave it in a sort of warm spot, no place with a cool draft. You want to give the yeast again. Yeast is going to be doing a little bit of work, so give it some warmth so that way it can do what it needs to do. So we'll see in about a half hour's time when when the dough ball is all ready. And we're back. So I've let the dough sit. Now it's been actually more than half an hour. Half an hour is sort of the minimum time that you want. But if you just take a little quick peek. If it doesn't look like it's quite sort of risen as much as you had hoped, you can always just let it sit a little bit longer. But mine is risen as much as I could, as much as I'm hopeful for. And so we have ourselves some pizza dough now. Perfect. Didn't stick. Oil did its job. Great. Just gonna put it down on some flour on my surface here. Okay. Now, the recipe says that it will make 2 9-centimeter wide pizzas. Now, you could make 2 pizzas with it, but I prefer to make 3 out of it. We find that while you could do 2 slightly larger ones, we do, I guess, a little bit smaller. And in today's case, we're going to use the third one for a garlic snack. Alright, so I'm going to just take my dough ball here, and I'm just going to cut it into thirds. separated into thirds, we have our 3 different pizzas, or 2 pizzas and garlic sticks. Okay. So we'll put those guys aside. Next step is you're going to want to flatten out your pizza because that's way too small of a pizza. You can stretch it out by hand. You can use a rolling pin if you want to. I find a rolling pin really helps sort of get it uniform and flat, so I guess I kind of cheat and I use the rolling pin. I always put flour on my rolling pin before I start, just so that way it's a little bit harder for the dough to stick to it. The dough is very elasticy, so you stretch it out, it will come back. That's normal, that's expected. So nothing to worry about there. And I'm going to try to keep it round shape. It doesn't always manage to stay in a round shape. It's homemade pizza though, it can be any shape you want to. On Valentine's Day, for instance, I did a heart shape for one of my pizzas just because it was Valentine's Day. So whatever works for you. So get it out as thin as you want to. If you like a thicker crust, leave it bigger. If you like a thinner crust, roll it smoother or thinner. And then once you're done, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to transfer it onto a piece of parchment paper because I love my parchment paper so much and it does such a great job on helping me with my cleanup. So I got my my first pizza crust done there, or pizza dough done there. I'm just going to move on to my final 2. Okay, I'm going to end the video after I get the second one done because I'm using the third one in the pan. And then we'll move on to the...
So we can do our toppings in the video after you do this.
Yeah.
And then after when our pizzas go in the oven, then you'll do the garlic. Because the pizzas will still need to cool down, so you're going to have to keep them out while the garlic one gets cooked.
Okay. I never actually turned that on, so...
What do you want?
Well, if we're doing the pizzas... Okay, I think you're now in the shop, but...
Okay, I was just looking. And really, was it going to be my butt?
Yes. Why is it one works and the other one doesn't? Every single time.
And you want more than 10 pepperoni.
And there we go. So, I got my two crusts all ready for us to start dressing the pizza. I got my third ball here, which I'm going to use for my breadsticks. Alright, and now we got our pizza dough all ready. We're going to make our pizzas. You're going to need a few things for sure. Cheese, well, I guess not, but we use just some, in this case I think it was Cracker Barrel mozzarella. Just give it a quick shred with a hand grater. And then we have a can of the Great Value pizza sauce. 87 cents, really cheap, easy. You definitely won't need more than a can for making 3 pizzas, for sure. You need less than that. So go ahead, Jess, start loading up your pizza how you want. Now the great thing about doing the homemade pizzas is you don't have to do a half and half. Or you're welcome to do a half and half, but both of the halves are for you. Just like the lots of vegetables on hers, I do not. I'm more of a meat guy or a ham and pineapple, and she really doesn't like that. Step 1, of course, get the sauce on there. as much or as little as you want. And again, you can also put your toppings on in whichever order you want to. So some people like to do the cheese first and all their toppings on top. Other people prefer their toppings underneath the cheese. Whatever you want, it's your pizza that you're making. You get to do it how you want. Now, I was talking about elastic dough earlier, and my pizza started to shrink a little bit on me there. I have a little bit of a thicker crust on that side, apparently. Alright, so there we go. We started off with a full container, and we're just under a full container, so you really don't need too much. We move it from the can into the glass container, just so that way we can seal up, throw it in the fridge for another time. I'm a cheese first guy. Cheese. Now, you can put on as many toppings as you want, as much variety. I'm going to keep it pretty simple tonight. I'm just doing pepperoni and bacon. Jess is doing pepperoni, bacon, mushroom. We have some red yellow peppers, some hot peppers, and some onions. So she is going fully loaded for hers. And I like to keep things really easy as well, so I kind of cheat, and instead of actually making up bacon, what we just use is some bacon crumble, stuff that you find for, say, like a salad. Does great on pizzas. Okay. I just find this particular brand really clumps together, so it's best to make sure that you don't have it all pour out at once onto your pizza. Alright, simple pizza for me, but I'm a fairly simple guy, so I don't mind.
Drink some more cheese.
No, I'm good for cheese, I think. Oh, apparently I'm not. Give it a little bit there on top. Okay. Now, when I had the yeast activating, while we were waiting for that to finish activating, I did turn on the oven, put it to 450, and right away I put in some oven stones. I love cooking on the oven stone. It creates a very nice even base on the pizza. The parchment paper helps the cleanup of the pizza afterwards. We have 2 oven stones in there, 1 per pizza. Again, you have to pick which one goes on top, which one goes on bottom. Sometimes one cooks faster than the other. So when you are checking on your pizzas, make sure that you check on both of them and not just one. For best results, you do put the oven stones in right away. You want to give them a lot of time to heat up as well. Alright, so pizzas are now in, and we're going to just wait for them to start cooking. In the meantime, how long do we put the pizzas on for?
I think we start around 15 minutes.
We start about 15 minutes, so we're going to set a timer for that. I'll probably check in on them after 10 minutes just to make sure that I'm not remembering incorrectly and I'm not about to burn my dinner. I have to go get some takeout. Alright, so we're going to work on our garlic bread. So, I'm going to take the last third of my pizza dough, and I'm just going to try to roll this out as much as I can. This one seems to be a lot less cooperative than the other two. Yeah, it's starting to stick to my rolling pin, so I'm just going to grab some more flour for it. There we go, much better. Or not. Oh, this really doesn't want to cooperate today. Pretty on par for pizza dough with me, actually. Alright. This is going to be pretty thin, which should be okay. It's just some breadsticks, so it shouldn't be too bad. While we're waiting for the dough to rise, we actually got everything prepared. We shredded the cheese, got all of our toppings ready, but we also got some stuff ready for the breadsticks. Start with a lightly oiled pan. I'm just going to throw our dough into there. Okay, so now that this is in here finally, it does have a little hole, but we're going to have to deal with that. It'll be perfectly fine. So, I have my my pizza dough in here, and we're going to add a little bit of seasoning to it. So we're going to start with, the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of shredded Parmesan. Now, I really like cheese, so I'm not going to really measure out too much. So I'm just going to pour some into here. Make sure I get more than 2 tablespoons, but cheese is good, so why not? The rest I'll probably follow. Okay, so oregano, I'm going to use 1 tablespoon. Need my tablespoon measure. So 1 tablespoon of oregano, 1 tablespoon of onion powder. Does not want to come out today. Alright, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. I'm going to do a half teaspoon of basil. Okay, and then all of this is going into, the recipe calls for 3/4 cup of butter. I made a little bit of a mistake, so we have a full cup of butter in here, which I'm sure will be perfectly fine. Just going to stir this all together now. Now, this is going to be way too much seasoning for just this small little bit of bread. I've made it all up in the correct proportion, but what I'm going to do is just use what I need for this. I'm going to put a lid on it and package up the rest, or put the rest in the fridge, and we'll use that over the next couple of meals. We'll just have some extra garlic bread. Okay, have that all mixed together. And so I'm just going to use a brush, and we're just going to brush it on here. I'm putting this on really thick. I really like butter, I really like garlic, I like cheese. So the thicker the better here for me. All right, I have it all coated here. So I will save the rest for later. I'm going to just pop this into the oven right beside the pizza there. This will probably be on for, I'm guessing, between 10 and 15 minutes. I've never done this particular recipe before, so we will find out. Okay, so now that we have the garlic bread in the oven as well, I did take a quick look at the bottom of the pizza. The top is looking good, the bottom still needs a little bit of work there, so we're going to let it sit. Oh, and there's the timer for 15 minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly make up some dipping sauce for the breadsticks. So we're going to start with a marinara sauce base, not the pizza sauce, but a marinara sauce base. I'm adding half a teaspoon of sugar. I will be adding, what else? I need some oregano. I'm going to use a half teaspoon of the oregano. Go for a quarter teaspoon of garlic powder and basil. Garlic. Maybe a little bit more because I really like garlic. And basil. And then just an eighth of a teaspoon of salt. All right. Just going to mix it all together here, and then I have a saucepan going. I'm just going to heat it up. This is really easy. You just heat it up until you get a nice low simmer on it, a little bit of a bubbling, and then it should be all good to go. All right, so taking a look, it looks like my pizza, the one that's on the bottom, is just about ready, if not perfectly done now. So I'm going to pull this one out. Now Jess's is taking a little bit longer. It is on the top shelf there. I knew that it would. I'm just going to move it to the bottom shelf, see if I can speed it up a little bit. I'll check the bottom once again just to be sure. Yeah. It is still a little soft. I'll just show you what mine, ooh, ow, it's hot. When it comes out of the oven, watch out, your pizza might be a little hot. Surprise, surprise. But it's a solid piece. It's not going to crumble on me. It's not burnt on the bottom. It seems to be cooked just perfect. So we got one pizza done there. I have my sauce. It was just bubbling over, so I'm going to have a little bit extra cleanup today, but it has now heated up. I got everything mixed together there, so my dipping sauce is good to go. Just one more pizza and the garlic bread, and we'll be ready for dinner. Okay, so took 25 minutes total, but we now have our two pizzas all done. Hers does have a lot of toppings, so I'm just going to say that's the reason why hers took a little bit longer, plus it was on the top shelf. So we still have the garlic bread going. It's only been in for about 10 minutes right now, but pizzas are ready. We're going to cut those, let those cool down a little. Oh, we'll let them cool down a little bit first. We'll give them a quick cut, and then we'll wait on our garlic bread. And now the garlic bread is out. So those only took about 15 minutes to do. I bumped the oven up to 500 just to try to get this to cook a little bit more. I definitely had a little bit too much oil in my glass container to start, but it looks delicious. It's definitely hard on top. We got our sauce ready to go. We got our homemade pizzas here, and should be a good night.